Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. A little over a year ago, Danish guitarist Jakob Bro recorded all of his live performances, and tonight and this week he's back in New York City celebrating the release on ECM, his very first live solo recording album. Now, this album features his working trio, which features the great Joey Barron on drums and Thomas Morgan on bass. Now, Jakob has, for over the last 30 years, played with some great luminaries in the industry, including the late Paul Bley, as well as the great Kurt Rosenwinkel and Lee Konitz. Tonight, I had a chance to sit down to talk about this live recording. Also, I had a chance to sit down and break bread about some of his musical influences, as well as his impact on listening to the great Jimi Hendrix, as well as talk about this working trio collaborating with the great Joey Barron and Tom Morgan. Jakob, congratulations on Bay of Rainbows. In fact, it's been a year. You guys recorded it live here, and now what's the response now you're playing the music to a whole new set of music fans?
The response is good, I think, and the music's changed since, of course, we've played a lot of concerts, but we're still exploring the same tunes, and it's really fun, I think, to have that document from last year. And of course, it's great to be back here at the Jazz Standard, where it all happened.
Now, this working trio, you guys have been working together for a while. What is it about these two musicians that you've kind of had a kindred spirit as far as them interpreting your music?
Well, many things. The both Joey and Thomas have really, really great ears and a lot of imagination and creativity. So it's really fun, I think, when we're playing as many concerts as we are, to have somebody, to play with that can put the music in different situations night after night after night. That's what I love the most about this group. That the music keeps developing, but it's also sort of it keeps surprising me somehow. So I think that's the most important factor of this band somehow.
You've had a very busy year. In addition to the Bay of Rainbows recording, you also have another project that you released earlier this year. And also, this project that we're talking about now is diametrically different than the trio recording or trio setting.
The recording I did earlier was a quartet with a Norwegian drummer called Jon Christensen and Palle Mikkelborg on trumpet. So that's really a studio project. We did a few festival concerts, but the trio is much more like a working band where the music has been developing like the last 3, 4, 5 years. I think we've been playing 50, 60 concerts a year. So it's it's never boring, and it keeps the songs keep opening up into new sort of territory, which is I think it's sort of amazing to experience that night after night.
Are you going to bring that group to the United States? Have you toured with that group in the United States?
With the quartet?
Yes.
No, we're not going to tour. That band is not going to tour. It's that's going to be too tricky somehow. It's Jon just turned 75, and he's not physically he's not walking so well. So just because of that, it would be actually pretty tough, I think, traveling around the U.S. We have a lot of with the trio. There's a lot of traveling, a lot of early lobby calls and flights and sound check, hotel. There's a lot of logistics, and you got to be sort of fresh to do that.
I've done a lot of research on you, and I want to ask you: is this a guitar record, or is this a trio record?
It's a trio record. I don't think any of my records are guitar records. Yeah, I don't really think about music like that. It's yeah. I mean, I did a lot of different albums, and I think I did like 12 albums before ECM contacted me, and we started recording together. And that was like my first real effort where I, was sort of forced to bring the guitar out in the open, like doing a trio album for ECM. I think the first one was in maybe 2014 or 15, and I was for a while kind of in doubt if I even wanted to do that. And yeah, so getting getting together with Manfred Eicher and him sort of guiding me also has been a big step and a big help for me, I think, in terms of finding a way to also be able to play as a trio with the guitar and make it sound like something I'd like to listen to myself. Yeah.
You know, Jakob, I was going to ask you about collaborating with Manfred. He produced this record. He actually produced both of those records for you. What is he like as a producer? Because, when you think of ECM and you think of the almost 50 years of music that he's put out and the lineage of musicians he's put out, there has to be some kind of musical pedigree that he saw in you for him to work with you to get it out.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I met Manfred when I was in Paul Motion's band, and we recorded. Paul called me to come over here and do a recording with him in, I think, 2005 or something. It's a long time ago, and Manfred was the producer of that album, and that's how I met him. And at that time, I was, very young. Jerome Harris was in the group, and Chris Cheek and Tony Malaby and Ben Monder and Steve Cardenas, and a lot of great musicians that I all admired, and of course Paul Motion, which was my hero and still is. But yeah, and then Manfred Eicher also, and that was I remember from that session that there was a lot of like, basically everybody in the band, maybe except Paul, or had sort of like, I mean also Paul, but all the younger musicians had a high respect, of course, for Manfred, meeting him for the first time, and I was somehow too young, I guess, to really get it at that time. But anyway, that recording session sort of led to me getting the gig with Thomas Danko, the Polish trumpet player. Manfred recommended me for his band, and then I started touring with that group. And yeah, so sort of, I was in touch with Manfred for a long time actually about doing something under my own name for his label, but he was sort of like waiting. He said, "Now you're with Danko. Let's tour with him and you can sort of build your name as a sideman together with him, and then when time is right, we'll do an album with you as a leader." So he's been with me somehow for many years. Somehow it feels like.
We just recently lost Thomas about a couple months ago, and you recorded and you toured with him. What are your reflections on him as a composer and also a soloist?
Well, he was a beautiful musician, and it was a great honor to play with him. Of course, I mean, for me, his band was, when I joined it, it was very much like a classic quartet somehow: trumpet, piano, bass, and drums. And I found it hard to find a place for the guitar in that setting somehow. And Thomas was just being like very, very open and very like he was encouraging me to experiment and take chances and find that place in his music for the guitar. And we never rehearsed, so it all happened on stage in front of a lot of people. So and he never once like told me to lay back or we have to make this sound in a specific way or something. He kept the music fresh like that, and I really admire him for that.
He was very, very much in the vein of avant-garde.
Yeah, but also, I mean, he also wrote some beautiful ballads, and his sound on the horn was so soulful. So, I mean, standing on the stage next to him hearing that and feeling that was, yeah, it's something that, you know, it's always going to stay with me. It feels like it was sort of the same when I was playing with Paul Motion. I mean, when he was bashing his cymbals right into my face and playing the drums and his swing and his time feel. And I mean, it's sort of, I like to think that it sort of becomes a part of you in a way because it's so deep.
You know what's interesting about you is you started off playing trumpet.
Oh yeah.
And your dad was into music. He led a big band. I have to ask you, you know, trumpet is a trumpet and trombone are very hard instruments to play. How did you transform your musical ideas from the trumpet and then eventually segue to playing guitar? Because that was like, we're going to go on to Jimi Hendrix in a second.
Yeah, I think I'm still sort of working on that. It's I definitely missed, or I'd say I'd missed the trumpet for many years. I missed the fact that you know, you could pick up an acoustic instrument and just blow, and then you would like the sound of it. And the guitar had all these options for me, like the electric guitar. Was sounding so different, guitar to guitar, and you could amps, and if you want to play with a pick or you want to use effects. So there's so many options. And I had a hard time finding my way with all these options somehow. So yeah, the music I was listening to after my sort of like fascination with Hendrix had sort of mellowed down in a way. Then that was all jazz, like Coltrane and Miles and Monk and Bill Evans and Charlie Parker, Lester Young, Billie Holiday. Yeah, all very classic sounding music, really, but where I didn't hear the guitar, and I didn't need to hear the guitar in that music. So I was sort of stuck with an instrument that didn't really fit with what my sort of musical ideas were heading somehow, and that was a problem.
your mental psyche when you started examining the masters of guitar like Jim Hall and guys like Wes Montgomery and Kenny Burrell? What did that do to you as a musician and also a person that studied the music over in Denmark?
Um, yeah, I mean that I love the guitar players you mentioned, and I've been transcribing and also found like a really big love uh, for the instrument in that like area of sound somehow. But while studying those guitar players, I also sort of knew that the music I was trying to create was gonna sound a lot different somehow. So um, and that's that's sort of still the case. I mean, I'm still trying to sort of translate everything I've been inspired by into something that I feel is sort of covering it all, which is it's a lifetime. I think something's gonna take all my life, I guess. But it's fun, I think, to do that.
Jazz music is about expression and improvisation and soul. What did you learn when you first came to America? Because reading your background, you were playing ping pong for a little while. You went back to Denmark. You came back to America. Then you came. I guess that was all part of the finding your voice.
Yeah. I mean, as a young musician at that time, I was going back and forth, and I mean, it's the first time I came to the States was when I went to Berkeley, and I was at that time. I wasn't really. I mean, I was there for 6 months, and I wasn't ready. I think. I mean, I was jamming and practicing, and got up at 5 in the morning, started listening to Chet Baker records, and then went to school. And as soon as school was over, I would jam, go out, have a meal, and then go back to the jam room and play some more. I mean, I learned a lot from that, but I also sort of felt like I had to, I'd like to also, find a spot for myself on the Copenhagen and the Danish jazz scene. So I went back and so sort of found like mutual friends that I could play with and write music with, and then I went to New York. So it was, yeah. I was searching and sort of like wandering, and didn't really know where I was going basically. But I also always had the music, I guess, which was my goal in a way. New York seemed extremely far away even when I lived here. I didn't play much, and then moving back to Denmark, funny, strangely enough, that's when I got the gig with Paul Motion. It was so, and then I came back and started playing with him at the Vanguard, which was like, felt like I was.
You were thrown in there.
Totally. And
the Lions Den.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that was kind of a. I remember all my friends from the new school were like, "What the hell? What are you doing up there?" Like, I mean.
How old were you, Jakob?
I guess 23 or something.
Yeah, 23.
Yeah.
Paul Motion will always be immortalized in that great trio, Bill Evans. And Bill was he was a consummate. He loved ballads, but he could also swing too. All the musicians I've encountered or I've interviewed who've played with Paul said one of the things that they've learned from him was literally how to keep time. Is that true? And he's a drummer, he's dishing it out, but you got to keep up with him.
Yeah, of course. I mean, but there was so much learning on all levels, I think, for me when I was with him. We did a lot of songs also with rubato pieces, and I never really thought about it. It was always swinging when Paul was playing, no matter if the pulse was steady or not. It was just, it was just there, the time. And he's, of course, completely unique in that sense. I mean, he's Paul Motion, so yeah. I mean, that was probably the period of my musical life where I learned the most, I think, and I'm still sort of like recovering from that, or still like sort of I'm gaining from that somehow still, and I think I will always be.
What's the difference between playing here in America or playing to, in native Denmark or overseas? It has to be a very different perception of your music and how it's being interpreted.
Yeah, I think well, the perception, I guess, is always difficult for me to really see or feel. Or I feel it somehow, but I mean, for me, it's special to play in the States, and of course in New York is always somehow both fantastic and it's also sort of scary in a way. I mean, knowing how many incredible musicians live here and also how much music history was sort of created here. So yeah, and yeah, of course, America in general, like playing this kind of music it's sort of special. But this is my first real U.S. tour under my own name. I mean, I was touring with Stanko over here, but this is the first one where we're actually going. We have like 11 cities or something. So it's really fun, and it's also sort of like, it's crazy for me to realize that there's actually, we played in Minneapolis and there was a full house, and we enthusiastic crowds in LA and in Chicago, and it's like, wow, this is really nice. I mean, it feels like there's a history here that sort of, but I think that the people listening to this kind of music, if it's in Europe or Japan, or if it's in South America, or if it's in New York, or it's also like a small family. So somehow it's the crowd is not big if you compare it to sports events or anything, but it's still like the crowd is there, and it's people who are enthusiastic and people who are most time knowledgeable about history and have a relationship to music. It means something to them, and that's always a pleasure to be a part of, and yeah.
Jimi Hendrix. He's a topic we could talk about for days. In his short time that he was here, and the body music that he left, what was it that struck a chord with you musically? Because, I mean, he was blues, he was rock, he was R&B, soul, psychedelic.
Yeah.
He was all of that.
Yeah.
What was it about him that just stuck a nerve with you?
Well, the first thing I guess was like soul and expression. That was my first it was something that moved me. I saw some videos of him and I was like, wow, that's really. I felt my hair was lifting on my arms and that was the first thing. And then he keeps sort of popping up now. I just listened to him today. Actually, I went to a restaurant when they were playing Hey Joe. And I was like walking in, and just the sound of it, and the groove, and it was totally hip. And I was like reminded of how great he was, and also sort of I was listening, and I was also all of a sudden experiencing new things in his sound and music. So it's it's so many levels of his musicality that you can delve or dive into.
Isn't it crazy that the first record was a strictly rock record, and then the last record was with the band of Gypsies? It was really kind of Americana music at its finest.
Yeah, I mean he was
moving all over the place.
Yeah, he was a genius, I think.
As a jazz musician, putting his genius into your context as a guitarist, do you think it's always best to keep evolving? Like, say 20 years from now, you're going to listen to this record, this live record. There are going to be some things that you liked and disliked. What is it as a guitarist that you're doing now that you want to do, keep progressing as a composer as well as an instrumentalist?
Well, I think where I am with my instrument goes sort of hand in hand with the music I'm creating, of course, and I try to, the recordings I'm doing and the musical statements that I put out, I try to, make them be as good as I can. And it's not really so much about being great on my instrument. It's about communication and about expression and about finding a sound together with a band. And I find that to sort of last. I'm not going to sit when I'm 80 years old and think that there's a guitar note that's not cool in that album. I wish I could have changed, at least not on the last maybe 10 albums I did. It's music, and it's like that was what we were doing at that particular time, these particular human beings that were there, and I think I'd just like to keep trying to do that, compose and sort of arrange for different people, and with this trio I'd like to keep playing and develop our interplay and the ideas we're getting while we're playing together. And it becomes stronger and stronger the more concerts we play, and I think that's going to be a lasting thing somehow, even though I don't sound like Jimi Hendrix.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at the famed Jazz Standard here in New York City. I'd like to personally congratulate and thank the incomparable Jakob Bro for his time. Make sure you go out and buy both of his CDs, which are now available on the ECM imprint, which you can now get on his website, as well as Amazon.com, as well as iTunes. I'd like to personally thank Tina Pelican over at ECM for arranging my time with Jakob, as well as I'd like to personally thank the staff and management here at the Jazz Standard for their warm hospitality. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column, as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.